Onto this card itself, there was a heavyweight fight to start. There wasn't really much of it, and I think that one guy was injured, so we won't go too far in detail about that. Adam Brooks, our old mate, he got a win against Gavino. Good to see him come back. I think that Gavino was overmatched, but I think it sort of works itself out, because I think that Adam Brooks, albeit he was the one that was game for the fight, and he's game as a badger, Adam Brooks, and he loves to get stuck in and have a tear up. He was probably overmatched himself against King Kenny, so good to see him come back. Got quite a comfortable, sort of easy-ish win over Gavino. But did you see any sort of worries there from Adam Brooks' perspective?
Well, apparently he's broke his hand,
right.
So that's not great. So he's going to have a bit of a break after that. But I just think Adam needs to think about what he wants out of this now. He's obviously had a great time with Misfits. He's had some exciting moments, good fights, and brings it. I thought his defence looked a bit questionable at times in there. I think he was a little bit, and it's hard with, right, because he's still learning, and you're all on the attack, and that's when you're gonna get caught, right? I think Wade even later on in that night was a little bit like that, like, when you're first learning how to fight, naturally that will happen, but I just think he needs to think about what level, because he's almost someone you need to hold back. I think he would take on a KSI if they let him. Do you know what I'm saying? And he's so game, it's almost dangerous. So I just think he needs to be well matched and give him some appropriate fights, and not, because I don't want to see this guy get into a situation where people are, again, with Kenny, that much quicker than him, that much younger than him. I think there needs to, and I think where they're matching him right now is probably pretty good.
Well, they were speaking, or he was speaking himself, Adam, after the fight, about the potential of fighting Pineda or the potential of fighting a Deji. Personally, I actually think that the different in class between a Pineda and a Deji is quite clear for me. I think that Deji, not on his last performance, but on form, I think is a fair bit better than Pineda. But I could be wrong. Yeah. I could be wrong on that one.
No, technically, Deji's far more gifted, but Pineda actually trains.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think about a potential Adam Brooks against Deji fight? Do you think that's something that could happen? Because obviously Deji, I think he's trained by he's trained by King Kenny's trainer, so they'd have a bit of intel on him and they'd have prepared for him already. I
think it'd be a good fight, purely because I think Deji might give Adam a chance, because if Adam trains hard and is fit and ready to go and puts it on Deji, he'll ask questions, and that's when we'll find out if Deji's prepared properly or not. Do you know what I mean? I know Leon, Coach of the Year, shout out to Leon, got Coach of the Year Misfits. He refused, I think, to do Deji's strength and conditioning for the last fight. He was like, and I think when someone who's serious and someone who we know is highly respected of getting results can't be arsed with you, it's because of the way you can be sometimes. So I think that's just, and Deji knows he's got to either be serious or not box. Like, really, it's that simple.
And I do think with Adam Brooks, if you go in there thinking, and this definitely isn't my mindset. Listen, I get called old on Twitter all the time. I'm 30 years old, but there'll be people that will look at Adam and they'll go, yeah, he's an older guy and whatnot. I think if you go in there and underestimate him, one thing that they always say in boxing, the last thing to go is your power. And I'm not suggesting everything else has gone. I think Adam showed some good technique. I think that I'd agree with you that at times he was a little bit too easy to hit, but sometimes when I'm having my way with someone, I'm too easy to hit, because I'm just thinking, I don't really care what's coming back. But if you go in there and underestimate Adam, then I think Deji could be in for a real hard night's work if that one was to come off. Now, one of the probably highest level fights we've seen in Misfits history came after that, I think, between Afghan Dan and Little T. Afghan Dan was pulling off moves that I've never seen before. I thought my swivel round Most Wanted was pretty impressive, but Afghan Dan took it to a next level, didn't he?
It was brilliant. I have to say, it was absolutely brilliant. This is the thing, right? Is everyone on Twitter who slags Misfits off, right? The pro boxing fans, that we go to every big fight, right? God, thank God, right? We're very lucky, and we love the highest level, right? Better BF versus Bivol coming soon. We can't wait for that. But equally, there's a place in boxing for this sort of fun. And what I love about a Misfits show is I'll sit there and get hammered drunk and laugh my arse off at half of the fights, just because it's fun watching people figure it out on the spot who clearly, haven't trained a one iota. And that was fucking comedy gold, that.
Yeah, it was. It was a sight to behold, wasn't it? It's one of those where I don't think off the back of it he's going to be high on your list to get booked up again. But at the same time, I think again, like, I was speaking about this with Josh recently, and Josh said to me, "What's more important, the fighting or the sell?" And I said, "Well, in an ideal world, you can do both." And I think the sell for that fight was something that, maybe because I didn't know the background on it too much, I didn't really realise until fight week came about and I started reading bits and pieces, speaking to people, learning about the background. That was kind of like a cult fight between those two.
Massive, mate.
Yeah.
Like, going back years when I used to hang out with Will N.E., shout out to Will, when he had an explosive rise on YouTube through doing commentary videos on this, Blackpool rap scene and that. And like, it was massive. And the fact that one of them was a little kid when they started, and now they're both like grown men, that was quite fun. But like, look, Afghan Dan, he needs to shave this bit of the hair just for a start. And if he ever gets back in the ring, he needs to have some lessons. But, maybe we'll see a rematch at some point.
KSI quoted it brilliantly. He said, "Afghan Dan's got that crackhead energy." I like that.
Yeah. JJ's commentary was funny as fuck.
I know, yeah. That was joke.
When he was like, he looks like he's just done a line and stuff. I was like, fucking hell.
You know what it is,
if I said that, I would be banned.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%.
I get so much more of a slap on the wrist than this guy. It's unreal.
Do you know what it is? I think it's... I think that this, and we'll move on to it when we speak about some of the higher level stuff we saw on the card. I think it's really, really good because I think that there's a place in Misfits where it needs to be like, look, this isn't just, throwing money at people that aren't even willing to train and stuff like that. Like, I will never speak badly about, anyone, but there was a point, at one point, I think it was the Gavino fight, when Mam said on the commentary, "Well, let's give it a good try." And I thought, No, not give it a good try. He's getting paid. He needs to try more. Go out on your shield, if not. You know what I mean? Because he sort of waved at the ref and whatnot. But I think go on.
Sorry, mate. Those early stoppages that we see where... I personally, if there's one little change I'd want to see on Misfits is, when we are in those scenarios, we've seen in the last 5 events, there's multiple fights where guys just duck out and just go, "I've had enough." And I just feel like, if you're, because a lot of these guys are getting paid really decent money. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like if you signed up for a fight and you're struggling in that fight, you can't just tap out and go, "Nah, I've had enough, mate." Like, that's, and the referees are so quick to jump in and stop this. And I'm thinking, that's, you're kind of ruining the fun a little bit. Like, the fun is to watch someone get their ass whipped when that, and that's what we're supposed to be here to watch. Like, you know what I mean? Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. We can't just be like, they're there now because you're losing a fight. Like, you got a chance to turn it around, bro. Hit him with a big shot. Anything can happen at this level.
And you're more likely to see that once both men are tired either way. But again, I think that what we saw there was almost a homage to like the origins of Misfits Boxing.
Oh yeah,
definitely in the build up, definitely in the fight. And I think that I don't look at that. And it's funny, we talk about reception, right? And we talk about the reaction online to KSI's fight and what announcement and whatnot, and then the reaction online to that fight. It's like, to be honest, for such a low, almost homeless level of fighting, that had a pretty good reaction, that one. So I think that there's a place for it. I think there's still an audience that want to watch that. Sammy Hamed, son of a legend. I was really excited to see Sammy back in there. We bumped into him out in Saudi. Really nice bloke. He fought a guy called Ziggy Johnson.
I can't even remember that. I mustn't have been there.
Yeah. We was walking through the reception. Nams being interviewed him, and I was chatting to him, and I remember I said to him, "What weight are you going to box at?" And I think he said, I think I can make 135. And I was thinking, I'm known as a big 135 guy, and Sammy was an inch or two taller than me. So, yeah. But he fought a guy called Ziggy Johnson. Ziggy Johnson, now, I've watched that fight back this morning, right? And I have changed my opinion tiniest little bit. I said to you on the night, I said, that's a worse mismatch than me and Most Wanted, definitely. I've not changed my opinion on it being a worse mismatch, but what I would say is Ziggy Johnson, from watching it back, did come out with intent. He did step forward, throwing the jabs, trying to actually land something, probably understanding that his quality just was not going to be there and his best chance was landing something early. But when you commit early, you can concede early, and Sammy Hamed pretty much had his way with him from the opening bell, didn't he?
Yeah, I think that this was... Sammy's obviously been well taken care of here. He's the son of a legend, one of my favourite fighters of all time, Prince Naseem Hamed. I still rewatch his fights now, even just for the entrances alone are class. But
I still rewatch his post-fight analysis after the Eubank against Groves fight.
I love that, mate. So... yeah, look, I think that the level should have been higher, but it's kind of one of those things where Misfits are sort of finding out the level of Sammy as they're going. I think it was supposed to be, a probable win for Sammy, but it was a little too comfortable. And I think they're really gonna up the gears now. There's rumours of some very decent 150. I think it's 155, isn't it? The weight class above yours. Yeah, so it's a very solid test on the way, and that's where we'll find out. How good are you then? Because he's got some good fighters coming.
My worry for Sammy is I think he might end up becoming, and this doesn't mean that I think he'd lose in doing so, but I think he might end up becoming a little bit of a victim of the weight classes, because there's quite a more of a differential in between weight classes in Misfits boxing as there is in just professional boxing. For example, in the UFC, you'll see 20-pound jumps, you'll see 15-pound jumps. In boxing, you can be a super lightweight at 135, go up a weight to 140, and you've gained 5 pounds. I take 5 pounds off in the sauna on the morning of a fight. It's easy to do that. So I think that Sammy Hamed, I look at him and I'm like, you're a natural probably 145 guy, which means you're 10 pounds over the weight limit that I box in, but you're maybe 10 pounds too light for the bigger guys at the weight division above. So I think that maybe finding people that are experienced enough to give him good rounds around that sort of weight and doing some catch weight things might be good for him. But yeah, if some of the names that have been spoke about are there, then I think we'll learn a lot about Sammy Hamed going forward. But as for now, pretty much perfect, and I think that he sells a show really good. Now, there was a bit of controversy, weren't there, around Carla Jade against Melanie Shah. How did you see that one? Because my initial reaction when the final bell went was that I felt like we would probably see it given to Melanie Shah.
Yeah, I was leaning that way. Although Melanie was holding on to Carla's arm constantly and then digging her, and I was like, you're fucking breaking the rules constantly. And I don't know why the referee did not intervene at any point. It was proper dirty fighting. And for all the shit talk from Melanie beforehand about being the bare knuckle fighter and that she would, like, this ring card girl isn't going to get out the first round with me, that was extremely competitive, really. Yeah. And I think that the lack of technique in Melanie was kind of on show there. She was just fighting, just walking forward. And you can see she went viral for getting her face punched in. You can see how that could happen because the technical ability is lacking. But what I can't say is she's lacking in the will to win. My God, she fights like her life depends on it. And I do admire that. And I kind of enjoyed this fight because Carla's like the villain now. And she's really good at winding these girls up. She has the silver tongue of pissing anyone off, and the crowd turned on her, and I'm like, you've got people caring. Boom, you've won. And even if you've drawn, you've won. So I think a rematch would be good. But Carla herself, her last fight, she got the jab going. She was landing the backhand as well. She needs to just keep that composure and do that again, because it was too much backpedaling and not enough punching.
Yeah. I think that Carla, I'd agree with you, is really good at selling these fights. Like she's taken to this Misfits thing like a duck to water. I knew Carla before Misfits. Carla was the ring girl for my first ever fight. Like you can go back on YouTube and look at footage from 10 years ago, and Carla's the ring girl for that fight. So Carla was always the ring girl on the shows that I used to box on, and I stuck with one promotion for the whole time before Misfits. So I knew her before, and I'd never seen that side of Carla until she started boxing on Misfits, and I'm like, fucking hell, like she can give it a good go in terms of a bit of needle in the build up, things like that. I was saying about how things change when the cameras aren't rolling. Not for Carla. I remember in Newcastle, she was having arguments with Elle Brooke when the cameers were off and stuff like that.
In the fifth round, when she started whacking this girl, I was like, boom. You're hurting her. Yeah. Believe in yourself. But I think that there was this level of like intimidation from the bare knuckle girl that really impacted the way she fought. And I think she may have a Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder moment where at the end of the first fight you go, oh shit, I can hurt you, and now go after her a little bit in the rematch.
I'd actually back Carla in a rematch to win that now after what I saw. And again, when I say that my gut reaction, I've not watched the fight back in full, I've seen a few highlights. When I say that my gut reaction was that I felt like the other girl would get given the fight, a lot of that came down to the standing count. And you can speak again about, you said earlier, that kind of a little bit soft refereeing at times. There's a few times when the referees are jumping. In professional boxing, would that have even been given as a standing count? I don't know, but I know that it was, and then on the scorecards, that's how it may have affected it. And I think that the tail of the fight for me when I was watching it wasn't so much that Carla was getting beat up or anything like that. It was just that that's the first fight out of the three that I've seen of Carla where she hasn't been able to implement what she's good at and what she's done. So I'd back her in a rematch, and could be wrong on who I thought, should have got the nod or would have got the nod on the night either way. But either way, I think she's a great character for Misfits, because I think to have that belt in that weight division, in the female weight class, I think she causes a lot of noise, ruffles a lot of feathers, and I think she's doing a great job at it so far. Let's move on to Ty Mitchell against Tommy Hench. And I was really, really excited to see the debut of Ty Mitchell, because he's one of these people that in the industry, we hear a lot about Ty Mitchell. Obviously, he's Clifton Mitchell's son. He's an absolute legend. Clifton Mitchell, loves spending time around him. He works on all the events. Previously part of Team Fury. And Ty Mitchell's, he's been a sparring partner of a who's who of British boxing at this moment in time. He's been in there with some of the best of them. I thought the class really did show on the night. What did you make of Ty Mitchell against Tommy Hench?
Very impressive. I think we're looking at someone who we can have a lot of fun watching, because he was showboating a lot as well. It wasn't just like, skills. It was entertainment and devastating punches, and also slipping punches really well just by the skin of their teeth. Yeah. So I think as a debut goes, it couldn't have gone any fucking better.
I think as well, like when I look at Tommy Hench, he fought. And I'm not saying that this was, the greatest heavyweight in the world, but Tom Little, right? Tom Little has been in there with Filip Hrgovic. He's been in there with Daniel Dubois. He's been in there with multiple guys at sort of British level, at heavyweight, sparring partner for Tyson Fury. Tommy Hench went the distance, I think over 8 threes or something like that with Tom Little. And that was not long after Tom Little had boxed as a pro. Tommy Hench also had a win, albeit many years ago, over Idris Virgo, and we get onto him. I think that Tommy Hench is someone that I never expected to win this fight, but I thought that maybe he would be able to test the toughness of Ty Mitchell a little bit. And in the time since Ty Mitchell's had a fight, Tommy Hench has probably had about 40 odd, 50 odd fights. Do you know what I mean? So I thought that he'd be able to test him, and I don't devalue Tommy Hench because of that. I think it actually speaks volumes to just how good this guy is. And
I think Hench is a fucking tough motherfucker.
Yeah.
I respected him after that because, as I said earlier, you look at some of the other people in the last few cars on Misfits where they've ducked out when it's getting hard. He really gutted that out as best as he could, and he early on showed some threatening, signs. So I'd like to see him again. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually wouldn't mind seeing. I've been getting Lawrence Oswecki from the Pain game into Misfits. I think Tommy Hench is a tough test. I don't know if they'll make that fight or not, but I'd be interested in watching that.
I'd love to see that. I think that's a real tough test as well. And when we see, it could be used as a really, really good measuring stick. Now, listen, you speak about the likes of Lawrence Oswecki there, the likes of Ty Mitchell. There's one man who's got, in my opinion, a bit of a problem now. Because on the night that I fought Little Cray Cray, there was obviously the Stake Pro tournament, yeah? Not just the tournament, not like the lightweight tournament, which was still sort of deemed influencer level, albeit I believe that everyone in the tournament was of a really good level. The Pro tournament, Benson Henderson, Chris Avila, Fez Batista, and obviously the eventual winner of it, Idris Virgo. Now, Ty Mitchell called out Idris Virgo straight away after the fight. And I thought the reaction from Idris Virgo was one that surprised me somewhat, because Idris Virgo actually said to him, "You're not on my level, have 2 or 3 fights." And I think, well, who would those 2 or 3 fights be against? Because if you're on about on his level, and we look at Idris Virgo's last 2 or 3 fights, are you telling me there's anyone on there that you wouldn't make Ty Mitchell a huge favourite against? Benson Henderson, Fez Batista, and as much as I love him, Aaron Chalmers.
Fez Batista wins that every time.
Yeah, there you go. He'd win the promo. But do you know what I mean? Like, when you're saying, "Oh, have a couple of fights and whatnot," I think that personally, I think that fan pressure should get on the case of Idris Virgo there, because I do rate Idris Virgo. I rate him highly. I think he's very good. But at the same time, I think that the fights that he's been in, for the most part, have been, on paper, somewhat mismatches, and some of the time he's made harder work of them than maybe I initially thought he would have. So, do you think? Well,
the Benson Henderson one's a classic example of where Benson did 5 rounds, hard rounds, with Chris Avila, and then fought him for another 5 hard rounds, whereas he was virtually fresh that night because he'd done 1 round earlier on that night. So, that shouldn't have been quite as hard as it was, and I think that showed a little bit. Benson was a tricky guy. I'm not taking anything away from that. That wasn't an easy test by any means. Benson was a world-class MMA fighter. But this is a different level. Ty Mitchell is clearly at a whole nother size. Size difference is huge. From what I understand, I think that fight is likely to be ordered, and if it isn't made, there'll be another situation where we see a stripping of the title. Title holders, they need to defend, and if you're in the pro division, we've got pros coming. But I hope that fight happens, because I think they'll clash well. That was a really good promo from both guys. I felt like as the champion poo-pooing him, being like, have a few more fights before me. As long as he's actually going to fight him, that's totally fine to disrespect the guy like that and make it like that. So I think, but I thought Mitchell came off really good in the way he commanded the stage, even though it was his first event.
I think with Idris Virgo as well, I think that the better level of opposition we see, I think the better Idris Virgo will see as well. So definitely not underplaying his talent or his ability or anything like that. I think he is a good fighter, but I think that's a fight that, for the Misfits fan base, if I completely take myself and just look at it from a casual perspective, I'd love to see that fight next. Now let's speak about our boy Wade Plem. We were speaking about Ty Mitchell making one of the best debuts, and I don't necessarily think that I'd say Wade Plem had the best debut I've ever seen, but fuck me, he was decent. Old Wade, wasn't he?
Mate, I was so proud of him.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, not just in the ring, but on the way to the ring and everything that went through it, like the press conference, the content he put out on the run up. We see Misfits fighters, they're just down tools a lot of the time, and they don't do the content. They hype the fight up. He sold the shit out of this. He did everything he was supposed to do. The ring walk, he looked calm. He looked like someone who was used to this situation, even though he obviously wasn't. And maybe the time under the spotlights around Misfits has helped him a little bit. But when he got in there, he was coordinated, he was accurate, he was precise. The way he was dipping down and throwing that right hand, and like, don't get me wrong, I got to give credit to the other dude because he was a big, strong, fit lad who made, despite getting punished by Wade, stayed in there with him and tried to make Wade work. And Wade did get tired towards the end. And I think that not only was that a beautiful debut from Wade in the striking that he showed, but also it was a great one for him personally to learn from, because there were little things that he's going to look back on and want to do better on. There was the cardio that he could have had a little bit better. There's plenty but that's the way you want it to do. You want to learn from it early on, but you don't want it to learn too much and get your ass kicked. And that was a dream scenario for me as a mate of his, because I'm like, all right, you're going to get so much out of that experience. And if that's your first fight and you're looking that good, and he's got a good coach in BJ Flores, what's the fifth fight going to look like? That's when we might see Wade mixing it with the likes of a KSI. Who knows?
I mean, I said this in a preview, I think it was, for the show, and it did the rounds on Twitter. There was, I think a couple 100,000 views of me saying it. Everyone calling me crazy. I had people texting me saying, why have you said that? Whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying Wade knows his stuff and whatnot. But at the same time...
That no stuff, though, when he was in the ring... You could see that, like, he was a thinking fighter in there, and people underestimate people who study fights over and over and over again. Like, they think, you can't. But in the ring, that was the difference between him and the guy. Like, they were both big, strong, fit lads. But the other guy was the Incredible Hulk. But Wade was thinking a lot in there. He was feinting. He knew. He understood the fight game way better, levels above him.
When we saw Wade's pad work, that's what it looked like in the ring, in terms of long lead hand, keeping it on their opponent's head, leaving that out there as a lever to give him something to think about, maybe look downstairs, come over to the top. And I know myself, right? Listen, I wasn't on YouTube breaking down fights and stuff like that, but I was definitely a pub expert long before I ever had a fight, right? And I was into boxing for years and years before I ever even thought of getting in a boxing ring myself. So when I first entered a boxing gym, I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a bit of a head start on most beginners. And I did in sparring. I did on pad work and stuff like that. I did, because I understood the sport a little bit better. First fight, everything went out of the fucking window. People can look at my first fight. I've uploaded it to YouTube. It is a brawl. It's an entertaining fight. But again, it's a homeless man's version of Gatti against Ward. It is awful from a technical standpoint. So for Wade Plem to go in there and to be able to be strategic, to be able to keep his cool, and to be able to really, I would say, stay composed and avoid unraveling at all throughout 3 out of the 4 rounds of the fight, I think is so impressive. And when I mentioned that 4th round, that's not even me suggesting he didn't win the 4th round. I'm just saying that was the one we saw him take a couple of shots in, and I think that's actually a good thing, because I think that's a little box tick there. I think we saw him take, it was a hook, I can't remember if it was a right hook or a left hook, but we saw him take a big shot, and yeah, it proves that he can be hit, but at the same time proved that he can eat a shot well. So I think that for Wade, the sky's the limit. And I think also I'd like to touch on the fact that Wade, what he's done there is a prime example. I often get people say to me, how do I get onto Misfits and stuff like that, right? And another one I get asked is, how do I prepare? I've had a few people that I know that have come on Misfits after me, and they've said, what do you think I should do about this? And I've given advice, even fighters that have fought on there before. What Wade did was perfect in terms of, right, I'm going to do this and I am absolutely going to go full throttle on it. I'm going to take myself out of my comfort zone, travel to go and train, with a trainer that I know is a really good trainer, established, has been through the process before as a pro himself, and obviously training influencer boxers himself. And
he sparred a lot of good influencer boxers who are of this level. So he's getting in the ring with them and moving. So he's perfectly prepared as best he can be at that stage anyway.
So let's move on to the main event. Anthony Taylor took on Darren Till, who was originally scheduled to fight Tommy Fury. And the main narrative I have seen online, and I say narrative, it's not even narrative, it's something that AT said himself. Now I know why Tommy Fury didn't want to fight Darren Till. Do you think that's, there's something truthful about that? Because I've got to be honest with you, I thought that Till looked like a bit of a beast in there.
I think there was a mixture of reasons why Tommy bottled that fight. I think one, the Furies are used to being the loud ones in the room, the intimidators potentially to these, some of these influencers that he's fought in the past. You ain't intimidating Darren Till.
No.
And Darren made that abundantly clear and stuck it right on them. And I think that there was a feeling of hurt pride, probably from Big John, that, he was a bit butthurt about the way that went. Then I think from what I understand, Till was doing some damage to big, strong, well-known lads in the gym. That then filtered through, and I think they got cold feet and thought, nah, fuck it. And look, the Furies, they've navigated Tyson's career for years very well. They're not stupid. Do you know what I mean? And when you watch what went down in there, that was a far superior version of Anthony Taylor than the one Tommy Fury fought. Far superior. And yet he dismantled him in a way that Tommy Fury couldn't do to a weaker version of Anthony Taylor. I got to just touch on Anthony Taylor because, fuck me, I used to be someone who hated watching the Sky fight. I used to complain and moan about him. He had a bit of a wake-up call. He's decided to be more entertaining as a fighter. He's been knocking people out left, right and centre. He's been brilliant to watch. He did himself a lot of credit in this fight in that he held, his feet when he was, getting hurt. He didn't capitulate. He took the punches. He kept going. And even there was a moment, I think maybe it's the 5th round, where he bashed Darren Till's nose. And you're watching it going, fuck me. You are a tricky individual and you've got heart. He's got a chin. And he's a great guy. Like behind the scenes, he's a lovely dude. So credit to him. He gave Darren Till the perfect showcase fight to show against one of the best guys in Misfits by a mile. Darren just swept them aside. And I think right now, I'd look at Darren and go, you look at Jake Paul, KSI, Tommy Fury, they're seen as the 3 top guys. Darren Till looks probably above that right now. I could be wrong. I don't know, to be honest with you, because it's one fight. But I think he's above that right now.
I think that it's not a win-win, but I think that when we talk about clouds having silver linings, I think that there becomes a moment in fights when you realise that a guy that you're in with is maybe a level above what you perceived him as or whatever, and there also comes moments in certain fights where you realise that the guy you're in with is a level above what you're able to even compete with. And I think that Anthony Taylor from the first round would have realised that he's a level above what I can even compete with. And this is where the silver lining comes into it, because much like we said about Tommy Hench, in that moment, there's so many fighters, fighting men that will jack it. There's so many, honestly, believe me, I've seen it time in, time out. And one thing you can't say is that Anthony Taylor jacked it. And like you say, he landed that beauty of an overhand right when Darren Till was walking onto him. So I think he comes away with huge credit. And I think that there's obviously he's going to need a bit of rest and recovery, but there's no massive need for a rebuild process, anything like that. I still rate him as one of the most entertaining fighters on the rooster.
One comment I want to make is there's been a bit of things on Twitter said about Jake Paul's performance against Tyron Woodley now looks even more impressive. And I agree. It actually does. I will agree. I think it needs to be given a bit more credit than what maybe it is given. There was this notion that any decent boxer beats an MMA guy, and I think that Darren Till's shown what MMA guys can do in this space in that moment. However, because the mathematical equation done was Tyron Woodley beat Darren Till and Jake Paul beat Tyron Woodley, and I get that's a fact. But equally, the version of Darren Till that fought Tyron Woodley was a boiled down, young version of Darren Till who was still learning, and now at a middle UFC's middleweight, 185 pounds, he's a much bigger, much stronger, much more dominant force, and a much more experience. And all, he's in his prime now, Darren Till, really. Whereas Tyron Woodley, when he fought Jake Paul, was out of his prime. So it isn't the same thing. I think people are doing, adding 2 + 2 and getting 5 a little bit there. But I agree, and it did make me think. I don't know if KSI will ever fight Darren Till. I don't know. There's been mentions of it. But Jake Paul, Darren Till would be a fucking fun fight to watch. And if I'm Jake Paul, I mean, I know that they've got aspirations of huge fights, but that would be a great fight to watch.
Yeah, I think it'd be massive. I think build-up wise, it'd be huge. I think Darren Till ticks every single box in terms of he can build a fight great. He can fight great himself, like you say, at a more natural weight now. There was a lot made of the weight. Darren Till looked light on his feet. To me, one of the main things I was saying to, I was watching it with a friend, and I was saying to her, so when you're watching this, I said, just look at his footwork. I said, because every time he gets him there and he gets to the position where a lot of the time in boxing, you'll revert to type. So say, for example, recently we've seen AT box with a much more explosive style. We've seen him get some knockouts. It's been really good fun to watch, but we do know that he has those sort of, I don't want to call them dirty tactics, but he has those tactics where he can sort of just swarm you, hold on to you, things like that. Darren Till's feet showed that up here he was very, very aware of that. 2 steps in, a half step back. 2 steps in, a half step back every time. And I think that from a perspective of not only, you get MMA guys that, yeah, they're brilliant at throwing their hands. They put their hands together great. But I think that being a casual MMA fan myself, I think that sometimes you look at the likes of Conor McGregor and Darren Till on last night and you're like, you're a guy that actually kind of gets it from a boxing perspective as well due to the footwork in there. So I think Darren Till's a huge problem for anyone in the scene right now. Be very, very surprised if we saw him in with the likes of a KSI or a Tommy Fury. But who knows? I think it would be hard to match Darren Till up for the next one. Is it definitely going to be March? Do you know this? Any inside info? Is there a February show being lined up, or will the next?
I think it's March is the KSI event. I think that's the next one, as far as I'm aware.
Nice. Well, we'll wait to hear on announcements on that. Hopefully they've got a nice stacked undercard for that. So I look forward to hearing something.
Hopefully we get you on it.
Let's fucking hope so, mate. I'm ready. Blasting people out in the gym. I'm back to it. So we'll soon see. But listen, mate, thank you very, very much for joining me on the channel once again today. And I will see you all in the next one.